Hello, my juicy peaches, and welcome back to my channel. It is your Priestess Peaches here, supporting you to live your juiciest life and co-create a heavenly world. And as you can see by the title of this video, I am going to be speaking about Tia Billinger, also known as Bonnie Blue. And I'm just going to be sharing my perspective, a little commentary on my thoughts around Bonnie Blue and the things she's been getting up to. I'm speaking about this from the perspective of having been a stripper and in the whole kind of sex work industry, and I used to know prostitutes and porn stars when I was a stripper. And I am now somebody who teaches about sacred sexuality. I teach about female pleasure and everlasting sustainable love and lovemaking in long-term monogamous relationships. So I feel like I have a bit of a leg to stand on when speaking about these types of things. And I really hope that you will stick around and listen to what I have to say. Just to say here, please feel free to comment in the comment section. Even if you have a difference of opinion to me or a different perspective to me, I completely welcome that. Just please be kind and considerate with your comments. I've been in two minds as to whether I should record this video or not, or whether I should speak about this, but I feel like there's some important topics that I would like to address just from my experience and my profession. And I feel like my perspective might be beneficial for anybody watching this. So I'm going to be looking at my notes so I don't forget anything. So I hope that's okay. So just bear with me. So who is Tia Billinger? Tia Billinger is otherwise known as Bonnie Blue in her profession. She is a prostitute and a pornographic actress, meaning a porn star. She created her rise to fame through mostly focusing on barely legal teenage males who have just turned 18. So these are your freshers, or in Australia, I think they're called schoolies. She does a lot of rage bait. She says really controversial things. She is purposely crude in her approach of talking about sexual things. She got kicked out of Australia and she's not allowed back. This is all created hype around her and given her a lot of attention in the media. I just want to clarify my stance here. I feel uncomfortable about what Bonnie Blue is doing. I feel fearful about it. I feel sad about it. I don't condone her actions when it comes to the power imbalance between her and these teenage males, even if they are of legal age of consent here. I still think there's like a moral issue here and also a power dynamic at play and a vulnerability in the teenage boy. And there is a seeking there. She is pursuing that, which people will call predatory. And I have to agree, I do think that is predatory behavior. And I do think her morals are incredibly questionable. That being said, and I'm going to get into this more in a minute, but that being said, she does actually have the right to do this. She has the right to make her own choices, even if those choices are coming from a wound within her, even if they are coming from trauma within her, even if they are not beneficial for society and not beneficial for herself. Whether they are or aren't, she has the right to choose to do that. And because they are of legal age of consent, they have the right to decide whether they're going to partake in that or not. And so it is technically legally consensual. And from that perspective, she has the right to make those choices. But choices do have an impact, not just personally for her, but culturally, socially, societally, and generationally. And I feel like it's important to address the topics. I believe sexual expression can be really empowering or really harmful, depending on its roots, depending on its intentions, depending on its effects and impact. And there's a lot of disagreement in society around what sexual empowerment actually looks like and what that means. I suppose you could say sexual empowerment could be quite subjective to each individual, but I do see that there are objective realities here at play that matter and that need to be discussed. So just a bit about my background. So I am 42 now, so I'm one of these middle-aged women that Tia likes to speak about, which I'll share about in a minute. But back in my 20s, my early and mid 20s, I was a stripper, and I used to be very hypersexualized. I lacked boundaries. I lived a life of hedonism, escapism, debauchery, and toxic and wounded power dynamics between the masculine and feminine. I lived a wild life. The truth is, I used to really get a kick out of saying outrageous things, being outrageous, being crude, vulgar. I would attention seek and I would seek validation in ways that were really not very beneficial for me. And if you have ever heard of the Jezebel spirit or the succubus, the description of those traits, of those spirits, is basically fit the bill for how I used to behave and how I used to think and feel. And I used to use my sexuality and my femininity to manipulate, to have power over men, and to control. On the other side of the same coin, right? I was just very experimental. I have always been very free-spirited as a person. I've never fit into the norms of society. I was never very academically minded. I was very average at school. I was very creative, and I really valued experimentation, adventure, novelty. I valued play, pleasure, fun. Those were the things that I valued back then really highly. And I was just exploring the world, and there was an innocence to it as well. There was very much like a sexual innocence to it, an erotic innocence to it. I wanted to explore what is possible. It wasn't just all dark. And I really, really craved freedom. I really craved freedom, but I didn't realize that what I was doing wasn't true freedom. I was actually very much trapped in this escapism. And you have to question, what was I escaping from? Why was I behaving in these ways? Why was I so overtly those ways, right? And what was I escaping from? And for me, unlike what Tia says, I did have daddy issues, and I also had experienced sexual trauma in my childhood and in my teen years, and even in my 20s. Around that time, I experienced sexual trauma as well. Those things were at play, and there was me thinking I'm this powerful thing when actually I was really disempowered, and I was very wounded at the time. When it came to romantic and sexual experiences, I was very much into hookup culture, and I was also seeing a guy for quite a few years, and I never experienced any sober encounters, and I was always drunk or high or both, and I was very much in this performative, numbing myself and sort of living in this masculine-centric expression of sexuality to please men. And I didn't really know any better. I didn't really know my body, and I was disconnected from my body because I was out of it. I was out of my body, disconnected from my body's truth signals. But I was very much in tune with that reptilian part of my brain and the dopamine fixes and the dopamine highs, but I wasn't in tune with my truth and my body's truth. And now I have studied and practiced tantric practices, yoga, sacred sexuality. I have studied and trained in life coaching. I'm a herbalist, naturopath, Reiki energy healer. I have done relationship coaching, and I support women with love, pleasure, well-being, and entrepreneurship as well. And so, yeah, my life is completely different to how it looked before. So I may be one of these middle-aged women that Tia speaks about, but I'm not a prude. I'm not somebody who is not into sexuality, sensuality, pleasure, all of those things. And honestly, by the sounds of it, I sense that I've probably experienced a lot more expansive, soulful, deep, mind-blowing sexual, sensual, and orgasmic experiences more so than Tia has, and I've also experienced true intimacy. And I've sensitized my body, I've sensitized my yoni, which is the female genitals. I've sensitized my body and my yoni to a variety of different pleasure pathways and orgasmic pathways. So I understand the importance of raising our sexual consciousness, and I've personally embodied the benefits of doing this for myself after years of the opposite of that. And so I feel like I have some good perspectives to share here. So the first thing I want to speak about is the masculine-centric sexual approach and its impact on women. So masculine-centric sex, what I call the masculine approach to sex, or male-centric sex, or I even talk about it as the masculine energy approach to sex because of the way that sexual energy actually moves. The way that looks is fast, it is exciting, it is hot and fiery, it goes straight to the erogenous zones, and straight into penetration and straight to the goal. It is goal focused, agenda driven, it's linear, and it is performance based, and it is all about the end result. It is all about the ejaculation for a man, and usually a external peak clitoral orgasm for a woman, potentially a G-spot orgasm, which is another kind of peak orgasmic experience. So it very much leads to the peak orgasm, okay? And it's quite a high pressure situation because it is very much goal driven. So it's down a linear path, and it generally always looks the same or very similar. And it's quite hot and fiery and fast, right? And friction based. So that's the kind of masculine centric approach to sex. The issue with only ever experiencing the masculine centric approach to sex, the masculine approach to sex, is that for a woman, she will never truly experience her full pleasure and orgasmic potential, her full sexual expression. It's actually the same for a man as well, but it's our kind of primal way of having sex. It's so fast, you don't necessarily get to experience true intimacy and other layers of pleasure and sensuality through it. So you often just stay limited to one or two sexual nerve pathways, pleasure pathways within your body, when there's actually 63 nerve pathways to orgasm, and there are over 10 kinds of orgasm for women. And for men as well, they miss out on their multi-orgasmic nature and experiencing orgasmic waves that come into their body instead of just expelling and releasing their ejaculate, because the male orgasm is actually two parts to it. There's the orgasm, the ripples and the waves, and then there's the ejaculation. You can actually separate those two things. If they become masterful of their ejaculation control, they can experience non-ejaculatory orgasm. This isn't the same as a retrograde orgasm, ejaculation, where the ejaculate goes back in. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going down a complete different pathway, so they experience orgasmic waves that go up their torso and into their heart space. It's a very different experience than the peak orgasm, and women can experience so much more than just that peak orgasmic state. And so the issue with porn is that most of porn is the male-centric approach to sex, and it is teaching that this is the right way to have sex, this is the way to have sex. And the issue is that within porn, it is often very rough, very degrading for women. It normalizes this rough, kind of degrading approach to sex as what women want. Yes, some women might want that sometimes, but that is not what all women want. Some women don't want that at all. And it's not beneficial to only have that type of expression when there is a whole buffet of sexual expression to explore. So I don't know if you've heard about the 5 erotic blueprints, or it's kind of like the 5 love languages, but for sex. So a woman named Miss Jaya, she was on, is it Sex, Love and Goop or something? She was on some Netflix thing. And she teaches about the 5 erotic blueprints. So the blueprints are energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, and shapeshifter. And so porn is mostly focused on sexual and kinky, and very much misses out energetic and sensual. And a lot of women are very much energetic and sensual, okay, and not, or shapeshifters. And so it misses out whole blueprints of sexuality here. And like I said, this type of sex that is in porn is this excitement type sex. It's like high energy, excited sex. And that is one version of arousal. It's that excitement arousal. And that goes down the kind of fight and flight path. So I don't know if you know about your nervous system. So this type of sex, this excited sex, it takes you down the sympathetic pathway of your nervous system, which is that fight and flight response, where there's like a lot of adrenaline, even cortisol, like the stress hormones, right? Whereas there's a thing called relaxed arousal, and relaxed arousal takes you into the parasympathetic nervous system, and you can only experience the other type of orgasmic states when you're in the parasympathetic state, when you are in relaxed arousal. So you can't be in this excited, fast, friction-based thing in order to experience these deeper, more expansive orgasmic states. When we're talking about more full body or energetic orgasmic experiences, really what's happening is that the orgasm is traveling up your vagus nerve or the meridian lines, which are proven because we have acupuncture on the NHS here in the UK. So we know we have meridian lines, energy channels within our bodies. And so not only does the orgasm travel up your nerve pathways, the different nerve pathways, it also travels up your meridian lines. It's the sexual energy that travels up into other parts of your body, and you can expand your orgasm into other parts of your body. That is energetic orgasm. It's a bit out there for a lot of people, but it is a real thing. So the issue with constantly only ever experiencing the male approach to sex, this male-centric approach, the masculine, energy-driven sexual experiences, is that for a woman's yoni, again, this is her genitals, it can be too much stimulation and too much masculine energy, if you want to put it that way, too much friction. This can cause a sort of armoring of the yoni, and this armoring can cause numbness, pain, inflammation, desensitization, and it can cause emotional issues as well over time. If you've ever read the book, The Body Holds the Score, then you'll know that the cells in our body store our emotions, our stresses, our traumas. And it's the same for a woman's yoni. It stores so much emotion within your yoni, you would not believe. This approach to sex, if it's the only approach they're experiencing, isn't truly fulfilling, isn't truly satiating, isn't truly healthy, isn't what they truly want or what they truly need or what is truly beneficial for them. And so we need to educate ourselves, because unfortunately porn is not sexual education. And the difference between the masculine approach and the feminine approach is that the masculine approach takes us down what is called the procreation pathway. So if you think about our genes and the way that we are created to procreate, to reproduce. And so that is one pathway of sex, but there's another pathway called the pair bonding pathway, which is mating for life. We have both of these pathways within us because we have the procreation pathway, obviously to keep our species going, to populate the planet. And we also have the pair bonding pathways because originally it is for mating for life, to raise the family, to have that stability, right? And so the different kinds of pleasure, the different kinds of orgasm, the different kinds of sexual expression can either take you down the procreation pathway or down the pair bonding pathway. And when you constantly go down the procreation pathway, you're looking to spread your seed. And so it can actually like disconnect you from your sexual partner. After you have experienced the orgasm or ejaculation, you might feel a disconnect because it's the procreation pathway of spreading the seed. The pair bonding pathway is about bringing in the feminine approach to sex, which I will speak about in a minute. And that leads to you pair bonding together, feeling close together, feeling more connected, being more agreeable with each other. So in long-term relationships, it's really important to cultivate the pair bonding pathway as well, because it releases that oxytocin. It is less about the dopamine. And the thing about the peak orgasm is that there's so much dopamine released that you can have a come down from that, right? Whereas when you're practicing the more feminine approach to sex and practices like caressa, which I'll go into in a minute, you don't have these huge spikes in dopamine, and you have the pair bonding hormones, neurotransmitters that are activated that makes you feel lovey-dovey and close together. So the feminine approach to sex, the female-centric or the female energy approach to sex, is that there is no goal, there is no agenda. It is journey focused, journey orientated, not goal focused, and it's not linear. It's more like a circle, it's more cyclical, like a forward moving spiral. It is about the whole body. It's about being inclusive of the whole being and the whole body. It's not straight to the erogenous zones. It's very much about the energetics and the sensuality. It's about slowing everything down so you can really listen to your body's cues, and you can really go as fast as the slowest parts of you. And it's about discovering subtle sensation, new pleasure pathways, and becoming multi-orgasmic. And it is also about practices that do not involve orgasm or ejaculation at all. It is something called caressa, which is basically sensual practices, intimacy practices that don't lead, and even sexual practices that don't lead to orgasm or ejaculation. And a lot of the mainstream will be like, oh, what's the point then if you're not going to experience that? But you will find a lot of other pleasure treasures along the way. And if you can abstain from doing that sometimes, it actually brings you closer together and pair bonds you way more. And it allows for feminine energy within the female body, and it allows feminine energy for the male as well. And then he can start experiencing his multi-orgasmic nature and other forms of pleasure, and the subtle orgasmic waves of pleasure that can start flowing up through his nervous system, rather than having the outward, downward ejaculation response. The orgasm and the pleasure can start flowing into other parts of his body too, and it can be a very nourishing, sustaining experience that lasts a lot longer than just the peak orgasm and the come down. And this can actually fill you up and fuel you, and you can utilize that energy in whatever your endeavors are. So I will say here that when somebody is getting a kick out of something, so obviously Tia has a bit of a kink around all of this, like she gets a kick out of it. That's what she says. She gets a kick out of it. She gets turned on by everything that she's doing. And that mental and emotional turn on can sometimes override your body's signals and your body's boundaries. The chemicals of turn on and arousal and sex are very powerful, that you actually enter like an altered state of consciousness, and sometimes you can't hear your body and your true signals, and you can't think straight, and so you can do things unconsciously, and you can overstep your own boundaries and do things that can be damaging to yourself or others in the sexual sense, and it can lead to sex addiction, where you need more and more stimulation in order to get off, or darker and darker things in order to feel something. And that can be really dangerous. It can be very damaging to your psyche, very damaging to your body, and it can be damaging to other people when you're in this sex addicted state, when you're in this overriding your own boundaries and other people's boundaries, not thinking clearly because of sexual arousal and turn on. In the moment of being in this altered state, people can say yes to something, or they go along with something, and then afterwards they can feel really icky, or like, why did I do that? Or, oh, I wish I didn't do that, and there's regret. And that's because sexual arousal can take you down that procreation pathway. It can take you out of your rational thinking, and it can cause you to do things you wouldn't normally do, or like I said, be reckless with your sexuality and your sexual energy. What's my real point about saying all of this? My real point is that The type of sex that Tia is promoting and that porn promotes is male-centric. It misses out whole genres and blueprints of sexuality. It misses out female-centric sex. It doesn't account for the female anatomy of arousal and the complexities of female pleasure and sexuality. And Tia is an actress. She may say that she is really having an orgasm, and maybe sometimes she does, but she is performing. She is an actress. She is a performer. Unfortunately, because true pleasure, intimacy, and like conscious relating isn't taught in sex education, unfortunately, that is where people turn, is to porn, is to people like Tia, and that's what they're seeing. And at a young age especially, they will think that that is what all women want, that is how it's supposed to be, and it basically is creating a kind of standard that is unrealistic in reality, and it's not actually honouring of the full spectrum of sexual expression, which I feel is detrimental. I think it is detrimental to not have a balanced perspective of sexual expression within porn. Okay, so the next thing I want to the next thing I want to speak about is the power imbalance when it comes to the teenage males and the kind of predatory behaviour that we see with Tia. I do think Tia makes a good point when she speaks about how it seems to have been accepted in society when it comes to teenage girls, and things like schoolgirls, and the whole barely legal genre was based around teenage females, right? But that's not okay either, and two wrongs don't make a right. Two moral wrongs don't make a moral right, do they? Schoolgirls are not okay either. Now, there is something in evolutionary psychology, evolutionary biology, that says that men are attracted to fertility cues, and that some men are, I guess, what's called hebophile or ephebophiles, not a pedophile. This isn't about being attracted to prepubescent children, but being attracted to teenage girls and teenage females. Men could have an involuntary arousal response because of fertility cues. Now, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this is BS and that that's not the case at all, because teenage girls are not at their prime for being impregnated. And if we're talking about evolutionary biology or whatever, then that is unlikely. There's a lot of evidence to suggest different to that. But even if evolutionary biology is right, or evolutionary psychology is right, and a lot of men do experience an involuntary arousal when seeing teenage girls, then the important thing to note and to remember is that they don't have to act on it, and it's important to shift from pursuing and procreation pathway or predatory into protecting, because we need to protect our youth. We need to protect those younger than us. Those that are younger than us, who are teenagers, they're not fully developed. Their brains have not finished developing. Their bodies haven't even finished developing. They are not fully formed adults. And so they don't have the life experience or the emotional and mental capacity to fully understand or make really conscious choices. And so it's important, and it's really important to come into that protector mode, because we want to protect those younger than us, not prey on them, and certainly not exploit their vulnerabilities. So even if Tia does feel turned on by the thought of teenage males, which I find very difficult to understand as a female, and maybe this is because, let's say, if we do believe in evolutionary biology and psychology, women view teenage males as not fully developed and therefore less masculine, and it is said that women are attracted to masculinity in men, and so teenagers are not fully expressing masculinity yet, and so they are less attractive to a woman, and also because of our maternal instincts, it can stop a woman being attracted to teenagers. Thank God. But even if Bonnie Blue is different to that, and she does feel turned on by the thought of these teenage males, it's not beneficial to act on that. It's not beneficial for them to act on it, because there is a power imbalance, there is a vulnerability in them, there is a likelihood of harm, whether that is emotional, psychological, sexual, physical, now or down the line. And because their prefrontal cortex or their frontal lobe isn't developed yet, they lack reasoning, they lack empathy, and they lack understanding, and they do not have that life experience yet. So preying on them or pursuing them or seeking them or trying to entice them or seduce them, which is a kind of grooming in a way, isn't beneficial for these teenage males. I know that Tia likes to say that she's doing good. She thinks of herself as somewhat of a sex educator or a sex doula. I don't know if you've heard of sex doulas. If you've seen Virgin Island, then you might know what a sex doula is. A sex doula is not the same as a porn star or a prostitute in this respect, because a sex doula is somebody who is teaching true consent, intimacy, respect, loving, respectful connection, communication skills, sensual skills, intimacy skills, inside and outside of the bedroom. They teach about male and female-centric sexual approaches, the male and female anatomy of arousal, types of arousal and desire, types of male and female pleasure, expressions of sexuality, nerve pathways, the different kinds of orgasm, the wheel of consent, boundaries, safe words, and permission giving and continual consent. A sex doula is teaching about all these things. Now, normally, and in Tia's case, she isn't teaching those things, so she's not a sexual educator to these teenagers. And yes, maybe it educates them on what a female body is like and what it's like to have masculine-centric sex with her, briefly, but it is not teaching them about all the other things I just mentioned. And so she is not a true sex educator. And also learning from a porn actress who is commodifying the experience, exploiting the teenager and commodifying the experience by filming it and selling it, that's not teaching a male teenager anything truly beneficial about sex. That is teaching that sex is a commodity, that is teaching that you can buy a woman because she's doing it because she's getting paid for it, maybe not directly from him, but through filming it. That is teaching very wounded dynamics between the masculine and feminine. And it is preying on their vulnerability. It is preying on the fact that they lack reasoning, they lack empathy, they lack understanding. And it's the same for teenage females as well. It's no different. It is potentially going to be a cause of trauma for them down the line. It could potentially be a cause of distress for them down the line. And it could potentially affect their sexual cues, their sexual development, their mental and emotional development, their relational development, and down the line they may realize that they've been taken advantage of and see it very differently. So yes, they may get a quick sexual experience with a famous woman, but at what cost? And we're not going to know those things until later down the line. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, men have been conditioned to not speak about their emotions and not speak about these things. And so whether we'll hear genuine things later down the line, who knows? At that young age, they're probably thinking, oh, this is cool, this is funny, this is daring. But as adults, they'll highly likely regret that, because it's probably going to affect their psyche. It's going to affect their romantic and sexual relationships in the future. And it's teaching them, like I said, that sex is a commodity, that's the way sex is supposed to be. Sex is transactional, sex is disrespectful, it's lacking intimacy, and it is not the full sexual expression, like I mentioned before. What I've seen from my own experience and what I know to be true working with women is that when sexual energy is being exploited in this way, it can have long-term ramifications for all involved, and in this instance including the males, but it will also probably have long-term ramifications for Tia herself as well. And there are health and safety concerns here, and I know that Tia likes to say that this is all safe and she gets tested and there's tests done and everything, but we know from her interviews that they're not using protection the whole time. They only use protection during the penetration part, and we know that condoms aren't 100% protective against things anyway, and not using condoms for everything else is there will be a high risk of sexually transmitted infections and diseases. This is a high risk situation. This isn't any safer than if a guy goes out on a night out and has a one night stand. This isn't any safer than that. In fact, it is less safe because there are more men there. So if we're talking about the stunts that she does, having so many men, one after the other or all at once, then it's an even higher risk than if a guy was to go on a night out and meet a woman and get with her. This is a higher risk situation because there's more likely to be other men's STIs and STDs involved as well, not just the guy and one other person. It's the guy and all the people that have just come before him, literally, and all the people in the room. So penetration is not the only way that you can contract an STD, is it? So that's just ridiculous, her saying that this is safer. And also she may get tested like regularly, but within that situation, when there's so many men, any number of them could have anything. They could lie about it. Yeah, it's known that there were up to 30 men in the room at times, taking it in turns and being unprotected before and after penetration in the room, and receiving hand jobs and oral from what she calls, I think, her fluffers, which are other women who are keeping the men active in between time. And so there's no protection being used there. So bare hands, bare penises, oral happening all around, all of that contamination. Yeah, so I do not buy it that this is safe in any way. It is not safe, it's not healthy, and it is not safer than a guy going on a night out and meeting someone. She can't possibly have them all checked and tested for everything at all times. It is just ridiculous. It's not happening. And so you can't really trust that situation, can you, to be safe? So one of the things that comes up is about why men want this. Why are these men doing this? What about the responsibility on the men? And I truly believe that it is the porn conditioned minds of men, this dehumanization of women, entitlement to women's bodies, the objectification of women, and the degrading of women, and this escalating need for stimulation, more and more extreme things. People are so desensitized and also sexually lazy as well. There's a sexual laziness epidemic happening. And we've lost the ancient wisdom on the magic and the sacredness of sex and the other aspects of sex. People see sex as meaningless and just about sexual gratification or selfish sexual gratification. And because there's power battles between the genders as well, incel, controlling men, risk-taking men, and this entitlement to women's bodies and assumptions about what that should look like, it's like a vicious cycle. And so, yeah, I truly believe that this access to this type of porn all the time, like the access that we have these days, and it starts so young, it is rotting people's brains. It is literally brain rot. It is polluting people's minds. I'm not about kink shaming, but when there is harm being caused and when things are being done unconsciously, that's where I have an issue. I think men are seriously missing out on what is available to them when they go down this path of only that type of sexual expression. Like I said, I think that Tia thinks that all men are like that, and they're not. It is a genre of men. it is a certain type of men. He's very much attracting those type of men. It's people's conditioning and traumas and wounding and patterns all showing up here. And I think this, like I said, the porn industry and the mainstream like media and even the movies very much plays on just this like primal part of our brain, this like reptilian part of our brain, like the bonobo part of our brain, where we all become a bit like baboons, you know. We're all just, it's like our lower aspects. It's not our highest nature. It is part of us. And I don't want to shame that part of us, but I think we need to be conscious of that part of us and make conscious choices around that don't harm other people and that are net positive for ourselves and the other people involved in society rather than net negative. And also why men want this. This touches on the whole demand, supply, demand thing. So obviously Tia says, well, she wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't a demand for it, right? This is something that I deeply considered when I was a stripper, and this is actually why I stopped stripping. How do I explain? Okay, I'll just paint a little picture about my experience. So men that would come into the strip club would tell me about their pregnant fiancés or their wife and children at home. And they would tell me that they are lying to them, that they don't know they're here, that they think they've gone to the pub with their friends, or they don't realize that they come and spend money at the strip club. And I would find it really heartbreaking, and I would feel angry that these women are being lied to, that this man is spending his money on me, seeing me naked, when he has a pregnant fiance at home. I would find it really upsetting. Yet it was my job to seduce this man and make him spend money on me, right? I started resenting men, okay? And I already had issues with men. I already had daddy issues. I already had sexual trauma. I already had issues with men, and this just added to it. So I would be disagreeing with what they're doing, yet I would be contributing to it by rinsing their wallet. And I would justify me doing that by telling myself, well, they're losers anyway. They're lying to their wives. They shouldn't be in here. Basically, that is what I felt. And that may or may not be true, but that's what was happening within me at the time, okay? I'm not saying that that is right or wrong. That is just what I was experiencing at the time. And I'm not saying it's like this for every stripper or every man. And I'm not saying that all men that go to strip clubs are really bad or that it's all bad and wrong. I'm just saying at the time it was a moral situation within me. What I started to realize is that I was very much directly contributing to the demand by being the supply. And I would even create the demand because I would seduce men. There would be guys that would come in and say that they promised their girlfriend they wouldn't have a dance, and I would make it my mission to seduce that guy and make him break and spend money on me. It would perpetuate the cycle, and then it would be self-fulfilling prophecy. See, all men are like that. And then I would resent men more and rinse their wallets more. And it got to the point, because I was having some kind of spiritual awakening, plus my frontal cortex, or whatever you call it, was developing by this point. And I started to have more empathy and more of a conscience, and my conscience wouldn't allow it anymore. My morals wouldn't allow it anymore. And I started to change and have more consideration for myself and everybody involved. And I decided, I don't want to play a part in this at all. I'm going to remove myself right now. And I very much realized something else as well. And this is something Tia speaks about. She's like, I don't need a man. Like, I'm an independent woman. I don't need to rely on a man to pay for me. But this is what I realized as well, being when I was stripping, is that I realized I wasn't this powerful, independent, empowered woman. I realized that I'm actually relying, like, there's me saying, I don't need to rely on a man, but there's me relying on multiple men and a male-driven industry that was created by men for men, that I am performing for men. I'm relying on hundreds and thousands of men. I may not be relying on one man, but I'm not independent. I'm not an independent woman. This wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for the men. I'm reliant on them. It's the same with Tia. She's saying, I'm an independent woman, I get my bag, I don't need no man. Yet you are relying on thousands of men. You are relying on a industry that was created for men, by men, and that is run by men. So you do need men, okay? Because you are the epitome of needing men right now. Just like I was the epitome of needing men. And so to say you're an independent woman who doesn't need a man, it is just a false sense of independence, a false sense of power and empowerment. It's not real, it's not true, it's not based in reality. So I disagree with that, and it's a conclusion I came to within myself as well. Now, obviously, we're all interdependent beings. We all rely on each other, okay? That's how the world goes round. That's how everything goes round. But I'm just saying, to her point of being this independent woman who doesn't need a man, yeah, no, you don't need a man because you need thousands of men now. So, and I also believe that all women have their inner erotic goddess and their inner succubus and the inner dark feminine, the inner temptress, the inner seductress, right? We all have that within us, and there's healthy expressions of that as well as wounded expressions of that. And there's ways you can express that and connect with those parts of you that aren't harmful to others. And I do believe that the erotic archetype within us does like to be witnessed. It likes to be adored. It likes to be worshipped. But yeah, that can become toxic. It can become wounded. It can become attention-seeky in a really negative, detrimental way. And unfortunately, when it shifts over into a wounded way of expression, it can, like I said, become more and more outrageous over time. It's like darker and darker acts to get noticed, to receive that validation or attention. That's where it becomes addictive, toxic, detrimental, and it's almost like vampire-ish, and it's insatiable. Yeah, discovering the roots of that is really important, and discovering where the wounds come into play is really important. Is it coming from genuine desire that is genuinely healthy, or is it coming from a wounded space? Is it coming from a toxic space, a traumatized space? And this is where I want to get into the whole ASPD, so antisocial personality disorder. I think that's how you say it. So it's like the sociopathy, narcissism, psychopathy. Is Tia Billinger a sociopath, a narcissist, a psychopath? Has she got these tendencies? I am not a psychologist, so I cannot diagnose anybody, but I do know the traits of these things, of ASPD. So the traits are a lack of empathy, being manipulative, calculating, superficial charm, playing the victim, never in the wrong, blaming others, risky behavior, even enjoyment from harming others or controlling others. Dangerous, because oftentimes these people like that can speak with a lot of conviction, and that conviction can sound like truth, but it's not. It's often half-truths. And so it's easy to get sucked into what they're saying. The main cause is often childhood trauma or neglect. And sometimes it can be genetic and brain chemistry related, but normally the brain chemistry stuff is because of the childhood stuff. So the brain develops differently because of childhood trauma or neglect. So the brain differences are, there's a reduced grey matter, altered amygdala, altered stress responses, frontal lobe function differences. And people question, is it nature, is it nurture? Is it biology and genetics, or is it upbringing? It is usually nurture, okay? But sometimes, in very rare cases, it can be nature, genetic. So I believe that Tia does exhibit the traits of somebody on the spectrum of ASPD and somebody who has narcissistic, sociopathic tendencies. From everything I've seen of her, the way she conducts herself, the way she speaks, her answers, her very rehearsed answers. She's always got an answer to everything. I know she's quite expressionless because she's had Botox and fillers and things like that, but it's her eyes. Yeah, I do see traits of sociopathy and narcissism within Tia. I don't know that for sure, but it seems likely based on everything she's doing, everything she says, the way she conducts herself. And if that is the case, then it's highly likely it is because of some kind of neglect or trauma in her childhood. And I know she says it's not that, but we don't know that for sure. Of course, she's not going to broadcast that because she is trying to make money and she doesn't want people thinking that about her, or to deter the men from doing this. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But if she is on the spectrum of sociopathy, narcissism, psychopathy, then it's highly likely she has experienced some significant trauma and neglect. I mean, neglect is trauma. And I just want to touch on a few things that I have sort of noticed. So she speaks about how she doesn't know her biological father. So she says she doesn't have daddy issues, but not ever knowing your biological father can very much cause daddy issues. Even if you're not fully aware of that, knowing that information, that your biological father wasn't there, that can have an impact on a person. The second thing I notice is that her stepfather fully supports what she's doing and is very outwardly supportive about it. And I find that very questionable and very disturbing. And the fact that it seems it's normalized with Tia, she finds that very normal and acceptable. That to me is alarming. And the fact that her mother is prioritizing money over her daughter's safety, health and safety, says a lot. And her blasé attitude, her turning a blind eye, burying her head in the sand, yet profiting from this financially, both her and the stepfather are on the payroll, profiting from this financially. The fact that her mother is saying, well, if your child was receiving millions of pounds, then you would do this too. I don't think that's true. I think that most mothers would still not be supportive of something like this with their daughter. Like, I would be heartbroken as a mother if this was happening. And the fact that she isn't says a lot. It's more about what she isn't doing, what she isn't saying, how she isn't reacting, that is saying all we need to know. Also, her ex-husband, I think he was very much a big part in her becoming famous and doing what she's doing. A big part in that rise to fame and a big part in her work, and also on the payroll, benefiting and profiting financially from this. And it just brings up questions for me. I just wonder, where's the boundaries here? Where's the concerns about safety? Where's the protection of Tia with those around her? Where is somebody stepping up to say, this is madness, I love you, don't do this, you know? The fact that Tia has spoken about that she can't conceive naturally, she would need to go down the IVF route, it's almost as if she's telling herself that that is guaranteed. Like, well, she can still conceive, but she just has to do it through IVF. But that's not a guarantee. And so to learn that you can't conceive naturally and you would need to go down the IVF route could have been very traumatizing for her and have a deep impact and impact her identity and her sense of self. And again, the last piece to this is the sociopathy, the narcissism. So if she is that way, if she has those tendencies, or if she is on that spectrum, having these people in her life who aren't protecting her, being told the news that she can't conceive naturally, potentially having childhood trauma of some sort, it's then quite easy to see why she would go down this path, you know? So everything suggests that Tia has experienced some kind of childhood trauma. My guess is that maybe she's not fully aware of it. Maybe she has suppressed it or repressed it. Repressed trauma is a thing. Suppressed memories of traumatic childhood trauma is a thing. I've experienced it for myself. I know many others who have as well. And these things can still change the brain chemistry within you. Experiencing trauma can still shift things within you in your development and how you respond to things. But maybe she's unaware of it right now because she says she is 27, right? So for her, you know, we say around between sort of around 25, 26, 27, 28 is where your brain is starting to fully develop and that frontal lobe kicks in. So yeah, and it's often not until later in life, like in your 30s, 40s, that if you have repressed trauma, that it starts to bubble up to the surface, or when you feel safe. So yeah, that can be when it happens. I find her answers to be highly manipulative. Her answers are very rehearsed responses. She lacks moral consideration. She's very robot-like, and she says a lot of rage bait, which is harmful, I think, to society. Also, and I feel it's really important to touch on this, Tia has a real nastiness towards other women, especially older women. And I know that she does this as a bit of her character, her performance, as rage bait, and also to almost make it seem okay for the men to do what they're doing if they do have girlfriends or wives or fiancés. She condones cheating, and she is very ridiculous in her reasoning for that. And it's obviously, she's very warped, and she's basing everything based on a certain type of man or a certain type of woman. Yet she claims to be a feminist. So she's so nasty about older women, middle-aged women. Me, I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm 42. Is that middle-aged? It's a form of ageism, I feel. I just want to point out to Tia or any like younger women, you are going to be middle-aged too at some point in your life. You will go through perimenopause and menopause. You will go through things in your life that knock you. It is highly unlikely that you're going to go through your whole life without having tragedy, hardships, difficulty. And as you age, you see more of this because your parents deteriorate before your very eyes and you watch them die. Your older siblings may die before you, your aunties, your uncles. You will go through loss and grief if you haven't already. You will go through health issues. I don't know anybody who hasn't been through health issues by the time they're middle-aged, okay? You will go through times of lower libido, higher libido, ebbs and flows sexually. You will potentially go through pregnancy, childbirth. I personally haven't. I don't have children, and I'm personally not going to do that, but many women do, and that can affect your body in so many ways. It affects your sexuality, your sexual self, your erotic self, your sense of self. So many things throughout life can really impact you, and all these kind of things, tragedies, traumas, stresses, emotional issues, health issues, can impact your sexuality. And that happens to the best of us. And it happens to everybody. Tia herself is going to be middle-aged before she knows it. And it does, it creeps up on you. And I'm not saying it's all bad, because it's amazing in so many ways as well. You stop caring about what other people think as much. You know yourself so much more deeply. You have proven to yourself your resilience time and time again. You become so much more self-assured, wise. You have a depth to you that you didn't when you were younger. There's so many positives to aging. It is such a blessing. And there's so much joy in the process as well, if you embrace it. But it sounds like Tia may not be embracing it because, yeah, she has a real issue about older women, or so she implies and says. It may just be her character that she's playing. And I get the sense that she plays on that so that the men feel entitled to go and see her, to go and do that with her, even if they have wives and girlfriends at home. It activates that entitlement within them. If they have been in a lull in their relationship with their partner sexually, or if she's pregnant, or if she's going through the menopause, or if there's been a dry spell, or if they've got health issues or problems, or she's grieving about something and their sex life isn't what it used to be, or whatever. Maybe there's stuff going on in their relationship. The type of things that Tia is saying is playing on the male entitlement, sexual entitlement, the male entitlement to a female's body. And so she is trying to make it acceptable and get them to let themselves off the hook if they want to cheat with her, which is just awful. It is absolutely awful, because there's already been women coming out saying that their partners have cheated on them with Tia, and it's broken up their family, and it is absolutely devastating. And so for her to be in favor of that just shows what kind of character she has. This is another reason why I do believe she is at least on the spectrum of sociopathy, because that is not that is not an empathetic, kind thing to say or believe or think or do, okay? And the truth is, a relationship isn't just based on sex. Yes, it's a big part of it, but an intimate, long-term relationship is based on deeper love, respect, emotional connection, sharing values, a partnership, and those things matter too. And when you're in a long-term relationship, you really do need to adopt a mindset or way of being that is one of grace, compassion, care, kindness, patience, openness between the couple, especially if one person is struggling, especially when it comes to sexuality, because it's a deeply vulnerable, intimate thing for a lot of people. For a lot of people, their sexuality is a vulnerable thing, and it's an intimate thing, and it requires a level of care and consideration and love. Most women are not going to settle for just this one approach to sex. We don't want to just be robots. We don't want to be treated like machines. We can't just switch on and perform. We're complex, sovereign, human people with baggage, with traumas, with conditioning, with suffering, with issues, right? And so it's really unfair to have these expectations on women when we are complex sexual beings and our emotionality is deeply linked to our sexuality. And although for people like Tia who have numbed themselves and they switch off to that, they are able to perform like robots and machines, right? Because they're completely numb to the truth of their bodies, and they're acting from that reptilian brain. They're acting from that sexual addictive space, and that is not the reality for most people, especially most women. We are psycho-emotional sexual beings. It's the psycho-emotional sexual link, and that is true for most women who haven't numbed themselves out. From working with many women, what I have seen is that women tend to go off sex with their partner, with their man, is because of this one expression of sex, that it's only ever been masculine-centric sex, and neither one of the partners has known there's a whole other world of sexuality to explore. And it's a type of sex that lacks kind of true intimacy, it lacks sensuality, it lacks depth, it lacks variety, and it is only ever down one pathway, this goal-orientated pathway, and only ever one type of orgasm. And like I said, for women, it's not truly fulfilling, it's not their true full sexual expression. So no wonder over time her body starts shutting down to it. The way that I can describe it is it's a pleasure gap, it's an orgasm gap, because many men feel very satisfied with the male-centric approach, funnily enough. Many men feel satisfied with the peak orgasm and ejaculation because that is their natural state. That is not a woman's natural state, and so there is a pleasure gap, an orgasm gap. It's like going out to a meal and your partner always gets a 3-course meal and you always just get a bread roll on the side again and again. Eventually, if it was a man and every time you went to a restaurant on a date, you had a 3-course meal and he just got a bread roll, he would stop wanting to go to that restaurant, right? And he would stop wanting to go with you because he's only ever getting a bread roll, right? There's a gap there. And usually what I've seen is that because so many people are not educated on how to create sustainable, everlasting sexual growth and expansion, that the sex becomes very samey and monotonous, and a woman especially will turn off to that. And because it lacks variety, it lacks depth, it lacks intimacy, and because oftentimes there's no intimacy or sensuality within the relationship unless it's about to lead to goal-orientated sex, and that is so much pressure and masculine energy for a woman There needs to be times of sexual play that doesn't lead to that. There needs to be time of intimacy that doesn't lead to sexual play. There needs to be a variety of sensuality within the relationship, not just sexuality. And so that can often play a big role as to why women start to shut down. And the issue is women start shutting down thinking it's their fault, it's all their fault, it's all their problem, because that's what we've been conditioned. And she starts feeling guilty and obligated and pressure to perform in this masculine approach. And those lower emotions of guilt and obligation and pressure shut down her body even more. And if she keeps overriding that and going ahead and doing it anyway to please him, she's going to start resenting it and resenting him. And it can just be a complete turn off. And then he can feel that happening. And then it's not truly fulfilling for either of them. And if a woman is only ever really experiencing that peak orgasm or external clitoral orgasm, again, it can mean that she's not fully satiated, and so therefore she stops desiring, because it actually can feel very empty over time, that peak orgasmic state. And when a woman is experiencing just one type of sex, the masculine centric sex, for years and years and years, her yoni actually can't handle that. It's excessive masculine energy and excessive stimulation. And you have to bear in mind that Tia is numb, and a lot of prostitutes and porn stars will use numbing creams, numbing gels. They will have to do things with their body and their yoni so that they don't feel as much. They're not sensitized to what it is they're doing. You need to understand that more stimulation doesn't always equal more sensation. In fact, less stimulation equals more sensation. So if you tickle your arm really gently, very feather light touch, and just feel that sensation, and now vigorously rub your arm, do that for like 10 minutes, and then try and do this, you're not going to feel it as much, right? More stimulation doesn't always equal more sensation. It's in fact the opposite. And there is so much pleasure and sensation when you slow everything down and you're not just in the masculine centric approach. Your yoni comes alive to pleasure. I cannot begin to tell you. Tia is very much numb, and even if she is emotionally, mentally getting a kick out of it, she is checked out of her body. And even if her body is responding to sexual stimulation, which happens whether someone is enjoying it or not, whether someone wants it or not as well, this is a thing called arousal discordance. So I'll speak about it this way. Arousal discordance is when there is a discord between your desires, your turn on, and your genital responses. One way that arousal discordance can manifest is if you're turned on mentally, emotionally, and you're in a consensual situation with your partner or something, or with a consenting adult, and you're really turned on emotionally and mentally, but you are not lubricated, your body isn't responding. Or maybe he's really turned on emotionally and mentally, but he is not having an erection. That's a form of arousal discordance. But it can happen the other way. When your body is being stimulated, your body can respond with arousal, as in you can become wet or erect, but that can happen even if somebody has not consented to it, if somebody's not attracted to the person, and if somebody's not desiring it. And that is a form of arousal discordance as well. So even if Tia's body is responding to sexual stimulation in the ways that you would expect somebody who is aroused to be responding, it doesn't necessarily mean she is aroused or enjoying it or really deeply desiring it. That's not what that means. We don't know. But it's likely that she is using a lot of numbing gels, lubricants, and things like that to be able to handle what she's doing. And she is probably very disconnected from her yoni and the wisdom of her body. And the truth is that women in long-term relationships, or the women that she's speaking about, middle-aged women, we don't want to fake it. We don't want to perform. We don't want to pretend. We don't want to numb ourselves. We want to be full participants. We want to be fully sexually expressed. And the older you get, the more you know your body, the more you explore these things, the more you will realize that the type of thing that Tia is doing is really not a vibe. Middle-aged women in long-term relationships, most of them are discovering their full pleasure potential, their full sexual expression. You can still create passion, chemistry, magnetism, polarity, novelty, variety, adventure, even when you do have blocks to bliss showing up, no matter what age. So blocks to bliss can be all the things I mentioned before, like health issues, emotional things, traumas, tragedies, things like that that are affecting your libido and affecting your bliss. You can still create chemistry, passion, magnetism, pleasure, novelty, variety, adventure with your partner in very loving, respectful, caring ways, even when you have blocks to bliss. There are ways to do this if both people involved in the relationship are open to exploring and put the effort in. But unfortunately, what the porn industry has done, and people like Tia, they are perpetuating one sexual expression, one approach to sex, and it is often not what all women want or not what they always want. So I just want to share some statistics that I have looked into, and this is just about the bigger picture of porn and prostitution and the real harms. And I'm not saying it's all bad, okay? That's not what I think, but I do think it's important to open this conversation and look at the harms, because those are the things we need to change, right? The good parts of it, we don't need to change. The good parts are good. We want to look at the harmful parts, the things that aren't good, so we can learn from that, so we can start to shift it and open the conversation and change it. So the average age of entry into prostitution is just 15, okay? And I think this was in the UK that I was looking at. 74% of women in prostitution have experienced violence. 50% have been raped or assaulted. That prostitutes are 18 times more likely to be murdered. Poverty or money is a main driver. 70% of off-street prostitution is from foreign nationals, and 6% of those are trafficked. 70% of prostitutes have a history of local authority care. 85% of prostitutes have been physically abused or harmed by family. Majority of prostitutes and porn stars or sex workers, the majority of them have some kind of trauma, sexual trauma, or have experienced some kind of violence or trauma due to this. Is this really empowering for them? Is this female empowerment? I very much question that. And I understand after the sexual abuse, childhood trauma, wanting to take your power back. But is this really taking your true power back? That is something I question, and I went on that journey myself and realized that this wasn't true empowerment for me. And so for me personally, no, it wasn't me taking my power back. It wasn't true empowerment for me. I was actually contributing to the very things that I disagreed with or that harmed me. And pornography plays a huge role in glamorizing violence against women, shaping sexual concepts and fueling culture. And I know that Tia has mentioned about this. I know Tia has mentioned that she believes that she is preventing rape. And this claim that she is preventing from raping by providing them with this service or whatever shows a real lack of understanding about what rape culture is and what rape is. One of the main factors is to do with power and dominance, and not just sexual gratification. It is about control, power and dominance. So for Tia to think that she is preventing rape is ridiculous, because she is normalizing degrading women, which is fueling rape culture. She is not helping rape culture. She is warping the minds of young men, and she is fueling this hypersexualization and desensitization, and that is not a positive thing. It's mostly a male audience, it's mostly run by men, it was created for men, and this male audience are watching high aggression. There's a lot of illegal content on porn sites. It fuels sexual violence, it perpetuates sexism and misogyny, it violates safeguarding, and there is inherent sexual coercion within the industry. It causes men to miss out on what's available to them, both relationally, intimately and sexually with women. And for women that are involved, there's a lot of harm as well, because it creates unrealistic body expectations, because the majority of porn stars modify their body. They have labiaplasty, They bleach themselves, their anuses, they have Botox, fillers, all these things. The women in porn seem to be the representative of the collective, are seen as a representative of the collective. And so, like I said, the men who are watching porn are thinking that's how all women are, which isn't true. It's putting pressure on other sex workers to do the same thing. They're all having to conform to this standard of having a certain look, certain everything. And when there's like more and more extreme things happening, it puts a pressure on other sex workers to do the same thing. Otherwise, they're not going to receive the money. And it creates a hierarchy. And this used to happen in the strip clubs as well. So some girls would do illegal extras, or there were some prostitutes working there that would go home with the men at the end of the night. And they were working as a stripper, but really they were prostitutes. And that would lower the standard for those of us who weren't doing extras and who weren't prostitutes. And it would lower the standard, and it would create a competition and a hierarchy, and it would take away customers from those who were not willing to do those things. And that would put a pressure on those of us who were not prostitutes, right? Which was rubbish, because there were some nights we wouldn't earn much money, whereas the prostitutes would. And I have to say, and this is a controversial thing to say, but I do believe that having so much access to porn and more extreme porn and this whole barely legal thing, it is a breeding ground for people and for child abuse. There's no such thing as child pornography. There is only child abuse, okay? And this kind of thing, playing on the barely legal thing, yes, it might be legal, but the problem with this type of sexual approach, it becomes addictive, and people need more and more stimulation, darker and darker things, and many men become sex addicted. They will start a very slippery slope into child abuse material and potentially even acting on that. And I think that this type of pornography and prostitution directly impacts that. I think it plays a role in desensitizing men. I think it plays a role in sex addiction. I think it is contributing to the rise of CSA on the planet and the rise of child offenders. So, is this really success? Is this what we want success to look like as a society? I personally feel that to be successful is having a net positive effect on humanity, the planet, society. For me, being successful means being considerate, being conscious, having a net positive effect in the world, not a net negative effect, not harming society, not harming others. To me, that is what success means. It is having virtues and ethics and having integrity. That to me is somebody who is successful. I don't deem fame and money as successful, because you can be a proper prat and be famous and have money. That to me isn't success. So people are saying, oh, she's winning. Well, she's getting that bag, so who are we to say anything? Well, actually, it depends on what your version, how you define success. I don't define success through just money and fame. Yes, she might be financially successful, but is she successful as a person? Because I would say she's having a net negative impact in the world and herself and other human beings. And there's going to be repercussions down the line. I'd be very surprised if there isn't. What is the cost to her mental health, to the teenage males that she is exploiting? What is the cost to their mental health, their relationships, the future generations? What is the cost to men here? What is the cost to women? Is money really worth this? Is fame really worth this? To me, this is a money addiction. People get addicted to money and they become greedy. And yeah, that can be because of a fear of lack, or that can be just through an addiction to more and more and more and more and more. So society values money and materialism over fulfillment, purpose, self-love, beneficial acts. Society seems to value money and fame and material stuff over what is actually beneficial for us as humans, for the planet, for our community, for our safety, for our well-being. And that to me is nuts. There's a place in the world called Bhutan, and in Bhutan they have a very different definition of success, and a very different measurement of success. They measure success on somebody's happiness and well-being and health. And I think we could learn a thing or two from Bhutan, because money and fame doesn't equal health, happiness, well-being, or anything beneficial. Money and fame can actually exacerbate all your negative qualities and create really addictive, toxic patterns within you and others. I know Tia likes to think that we're all jealous of her, but I can categorically say that I cannot think of anything worse than what she is doing to herself and others, based on my values, my ethics, my desires, my pleasure, my sexuality, my erotic self, my ambitions, my purpose in the world. I cannot think of anything worse. Maybe a few things worse, but not many things worse than what Tia is doing. And so I can categorically say I am not jealous of Tia Billinger. So I feel like we need to really redefine what success means in society, because this isn't it. This is not it. I really believe, especially in the UK, but in this society, that we really need to reclaim healthy, sensitized sexuality, because the ancients knew about this, but we have lost this wisdom. We have lost this knowledge, this information, this education, this science. And I feel like we need to reclaim it, because it is our birthright to be sensitized to our full pleasure and sexual expression in healthy, beneficial ways that are highly conscious. And I really feel like we need to raise the consciousness in our society, because right now there's a lot of brain rot. This isn't about me hating on one woman. This isn't about me hating on Tia. I'm not hating on her. I don't feel that way towards her at all. I do feel some fears and concerns. I feel uncomfortable about things, and I think that's valid and reasonable of me to be experiencing that. It's just about me questioning what we normalize and what we celebrate and what we value and what is truly beneficial, and just questioning the whole situation. I feel like we can create a world where men and women are resensitized and educated about expansive pleasure, intimacy, where we are sexually masterful, masters of our sexual energy, our sexuality, our orgasm. We reclaim the sacredness of our sexuality from a really whole space within. And I really think we can create a world where the youth, the younger generations, are protective from sexualization, hypersexualization, predatory behavior, and desensitization. I feel like that's really important. I feel like in this society at the moment, it's almost devaluing women's minds, women's skills, women's abilities. And so a lot of women feel they have no choice but to turn to sex work. And I feel like it's just rotting the minds of generations. Not all of it, I'm not saying all of it, but a lot of it. It's very hard when you're in that world. It is very addictive and it becomes normal. And so the people within that world normalize it, and then that becomes more and more mainstream, and it is a dangerous, slippery slope. I don't think this is where we want our world to be heading. I don't think this is going to be favorable for us as a society. I want resensitized penises. I want resensitized vulvas and vaginas, okay? I want resensitized bodies. I want sexual education that includes pleasure, intimacy, sensuality, energetics, sexual mastery. I want a world where men understand the importance of semen retention, non-ejaculatory orgasm, full body pleasure for men and women, not just women, men as well. This is what that can lead to. It's for both of our benefits. So let me know your thoughts. I know this was a really long video. I really appreciate you being here. I know I've waffled on a long time, but let me know your thoughts about Tia, your thoughts about what I've said. There may be things I'm missing out on, or maybe I am projecting some things. Maybe I have a negative thought on certain things that maybe it isn't so negative. Let me know your thoughts. You may disagree with me. I would love to hear from you. whether you agree or disagree. Maybe you feel the same as me, and maybe this is really concerning for you. Maybe you have teenage boys or teenage girls that are being affected by this right now. Just let me know in the comments your thoughts and share with me your experiences. I would love to hear from you and connect. It means the world to me when I receive that feedback and communication and interaction with you. If you are a woman who is wanting to resensitize, wanting to reclaim your pleasure, become fully sexually expressed and orgasmic, then I have courses and programs that you might want to take part in. I will leave the link to my website in the description box. My website needs some work doing to it. I'm actually going to be changing things because it's not how I want it to be right now, so please bear with me. But you can access things on there, or you can reach out to me privately. There's a connect page on my website, so you can reach out to me privately. Thank you so much for watching. I am wishing you an amazing day, and as always, remember to keep it juicy. Bye.